Hello, everyone. Just opened up the meeting, so we'll see if there's a couple more people coming in. I'm sharing already, aren't I? Yeah. We'll just give it a little minute or so. I think we've got a few people on the call. Just see if anyone else is sticking in. Not expecting hundreds of people to join this afternoon. It's just going to be a small group of us, so do feel free to, pipe up and put some questions. We can be a little bit more interactive with a small group, so that will be the plan. Right, I'll just start with an introduction of me, and if anyone misses that, it's not the most important bit. I'm Matthew. I work on building this ocean data platform with a team of people, my good colleagues from Hub Ocean. Sive's on the call as well, and we'll try to answer any questions in the chat if there's anything. And today, the intention is really just to give a kind of general introduction to the platform, tell you about we've added recently, where we're going with it. So I plan to do a kind of not too long demo, basically, of what the different parts of the platform are and how you can use it. And then, obviously, if there's any questions, we can dig into any particular topics again. So I will kick off. So first of all, what is the Ocean Data Platform? It sounds silly, but I was going to say, well, it's a data platform for ocean data. And in a sense, it's meant to be that general. So we don't focus on a particular domain of ocean data. It should be open for all kinds of ocean data. We don't focus on a particular type of user. It's not built purely for the scientific community or purely for the regulatory community. It's supposed to bridge gaps between people. And the features and the data we have on the platform somewhat reflect that. So we try to have both a balance between things that are serious and good technical backend infrastructure for data, APIs, advanced features like this, but also offer visualization features that allow you to use things. Use the data and understand it, even if you're not a heavy coder or a professional scientist or a domain expert in a particular data type. That the data should be informative and useful for you if it's handled through the Ocean Data Platform. So I'm going to talk through a few different things here. First of all, finding and understanding data. Secondly, how we might work with the data. Fourth, publishing and sharing data, because this platform is not just static for the data that we put there, it's also open for you to put your own data there. And then a little bit about where we're heading next. So first of all, finding and understanding data. If we start with that, then we're on the landing page of the data platform here, and it's this website here, app.hubocean.earth, and this is completely open and free. So please go and check it out if you haven't already. Registering gives you some more functionality. So some of the functionality we do require people to log in for. Particular things to do with hosting your own data, of course, then we need to know who you are and identify you in that sense, and some features as well. So the first thing we're going to talk about with finding data is, of course, the public catalog. So this is where, if you haven't already got any data on the platform, you might go, and you might want to go and see what kind of data we have there that could be interesting for you. You can do that in several ways. You can do a search on some terms, and I'm going to focus on a couple of data sets in this demo today. I think, someone on the call might be particularly interested in whale and ship data. So I don't claim to be an expert on the domain, so forgive me there. But you can do, for example, a semantic search here in the search and try and find some particular data types from the catalog. You can do the same based on the coverage of the data set and try and do a geospatial search using a map, putting a polygon in. And this is searching on the metadata of the data sets that we have here. And that might help you refine a particular area that you're interested in. Once we've found some data that we were interested in, and I'm going to start with some protected areas data, I think. What should we do? Let's get rid of that. Protected seas. Sorry, 1 second. This protected seas data set. This is one example, I think, of a type of data that we host on the Ocean Data Platform. This is another non-governmental organization, a non-profit in the same way that we are, that's done a lot of work in harmonizing marine protected area data from around the globe. They have a great application where you can explore this, and there are several other places out there where you can investigate some of this data and learn more about it. We offer also an opportunity to access the underlying data itself, understand it a bit better, and utilize that data in different formats through our features on the platform. So for every data set that we have on the platform, there's of course a variety of metadata that can describe what that data set is, can have links to documentation. Very importantly, of course, a license telling you what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do with the particular data set. And then, the primary form of data that we handle very well at the moment is tabular data sets, sort of geospatial features in vectorized form. I'll come later in the session onto where we're going next, which will include things like raster and gridded data. But for now, this is the main data type. So for a data set like this, which is actually highly complex in the amount of data that they've kind of standardized and refined, we provide a little sample of the data and all the columns there, so you can explore what the different contents of that data are. If you populate with information on the columns, you can say, add a description to describe what's in that column in particular, because sometimes the column name might need some extra information. And for each column, you get a breakdown of the information that's in it. And that helps you get a sense of what's in it. One of the really interesting things about this data set is they've standardized different categories of protected areas. So for example, for different things like bottom trawling, they've categorized each area into whether it has different values. And again, if you didn't know the coding, then the information in the column should tell you. So in this column, if it's a value of 1, then it means it's prohibited, and 2, restricted. So giving that combination of information is really important. I'm going to pop out of here and into a different data set and just show you a different aspect here. And this is another type of data that I think is interesting for the platform, which is data that already exists out there. It's a publication. In this case, it was published in Science, I think, in 2024 by Nisi et al. A really interesting data set. Often data sets that are published like this are stored in files somewhere, for example, Zenodo. And what we've done here is tried to give that data more features through the features of our platform and more reach, so we can expose its value to more people, essentially. So again, same principle as before. This has tabular data that you can then explore and understand. This is really interesting because they've modeled essentially the risk of whale and ship collisions, or ship and whale collisions, but perhaps better to say. So where we might see the highest risk for this happening. And again, lots of columns with lots of rich information here that you can then see distributions and all this sort of stuff. But what's really nice is when we can start really seeing and visualizing this data. And that's where we've added this explore map functionality recently. If we launch that up, then we get an overview of, well, the whole contents of the data at least. So you can see where it all is. But then we can start to visualize on different things. So on anything. Blue, this is actually the risk for blue whales in particular. You can see the distribution of those values. This is all actually vector data, but it kind of ends up looking more like a raster. And for each point, of course, it has a huge amount of information associated with it. again, that's true for different species or combined things of all the 4 whale species that the paper studied. So you can choose different columns to visualize on and explore the data and get a sense of it, change something in the visualization properties if you want to highlight maybe only the highest end of the risk spectrum on this data set. So this is where essentially the model that came from this paper thinks the riskiest places in the world are for ship collisions. And this, of course, gives you a sense of the data itself and what it could do for you and your purposes, or just for interest. Adding then other data from the platform to this kind of visualization, I think is really interesting. So we looked at the protected areas data set from before. So I think it's interesting to see where there are alignment or disalignment between protection and these risks. So this is this protected seas data set that we looked at before. And again, these are protected areas based on globally standardized data. And again, maybe for this case, what we're most interested in then, in conjunction with this NICE whale paper, is to say, well, where do these protected areas have something to do with vessels? And they, of course, have extracted a lot of information, and some of it is, for example, weather restrictions on vessel speeds. This is a tactic often used to, not only for the purposes of whales, of course, but a tactic used can be used to protect whales as well. So we can play with the color bar to make it make a little bit more sense, because we're really looking at where there are protections here that are in the sort of lower categories here. So 1 means that I think vessel speed is or vessel entry is highly prohibited, and 2, it's restricted. So the brighter the color here, essentially, the more protection there is on vessel speed. And we can see in conjunction with, for example, the hotspots of whales, what's going on here. So I find this very fun to play with, I have to say. So I'm just going to change the color bar a little bit, because I think that was a little bit hard to see. So yeah, sorry, orange here would be highly protected and yellow would be less so. So this is a case where we can add different layers together and then sort of navigate and look around the world for where these different hotspots are and understand them better, for example. This is just 2 layers of data, but this could be as many as you wish at the moment. And yeah, navigating around, maybe then we also see South Africa again as a place where there's a high risk, which makes sense. There's a lot of shipping routes there, and a lot as I understand it. And we see there's also some protection here. So it's also interesting then to see, what's actually going on with this protection. I think this protected area, for example, we can see its actual focus. And what is it here? So they're not really after whales per se. This one is actually mainly focused seemingly on protecting or due to seamounts in the area. So again, that's a sort of interesting take. It's the intention here is probably more due to biodiversity on seamounts. And again, maybe we want to then understand what's going on with the seamounts. We do have some seamounts data, I know, from in the catalog already. So we could add some interesting distributions of seamounts there as well and see. And now we realize why there are protected areas here, right? Because there are a lot of seamounts in the area. So that's how you can kind of build an interesting and explore data sets from finding something and then maybe trying to find some other interesting data set that's relevant to it. And this is all consuming data so far that's entirely on the platform and consuming and visualizing it on the platform. So I'm now going to just, I'll see if I can do something clever with this, can I? Maybe not. I'm just going to move on to this next section where we say, now, what about working with data? So far we've kind of explored it and visualized it. And now we want to say, well, what else could you do? What else can ODP kind of power in your data workflow? So one thing we can do then is we can go back to, let's let's say, should I just save this? Actually, so this is another interesting thing, which is this link is then something that you can save and share later on because it defines the visualization itself. So I'm just going to put it there for later in case we want to come back to it. So what we might want to do now is then work with a particular data set. So let's go back to our protected areas. Now this is a pretty big, complicated data set with lots of different things within it. And it's not always that nice to work with nearly a gigabyte of geospatial data if we don't need to. If you want to then have a mechanism for filtering down and then using that data in a more selective way through the UI to begin with, we can also then start to show you some ways of doing that. First of all, let's go back to South Africa maybe. So we can just type South Africa, and because there's quite a lot of occurrences, that's then registered. And we can do a filter then. Sorry, I'm jumping a little bit quick there. But what we've done there by clicking on this is do a filter on that column to only values that are in South Africa. Because there's only 260, we can see all of them. If there were thousands of them, then we would actually limit your view in this case, because this is more about exploring samples of data and preparing filters for other use cases. What you can do now, and maybe we actually want to put another filter on. So we were talking about the vessel speed there. So maybe vessel speed and vessel entry. And again, like in the other view, you can do visualizations in this view, very similar to the previous view that I showed you. And maybe we want to put a filter on this. So we're not interested where there's we're only interested where there is genuine protection, and that happens to be between 1 and 2. Again, if I come back to this column description, that's how you might find out the kind of what's the contents of that and how to interpret it. But once we put this in, then we get another filter and can get a subset of data. So now we've got 47 protected areas in South Africa that have some vessel speed restrictions as part of their definition. So that could be for some given project, perhaps interesting, but of course I'm just showing you general capabilities. What might you want to do with this now? Well, you might want to download this file. This file, that subset of data can then be downloaded in a few different options, whether it's Parquet. I mean, Parquet we actually would recommend is a great way of working with this kind of data because it really locks in the data types in a good way. Whereas something like CSVs tend to kind of lose some of that information in other ways, or GeoJSON. But of course, whatever you're familiar with can work if you wanted to take it into a local environment. But also, of course, this is really a platform built from the principles of APIs and connectivity. So code examples to how to use the data is also really important. So because we've done some filtering already, this code snippet that you have here actually reflects the filters that we've done. And this is using the SDK that we've built for Python. But if you're familiar with R, then perhaps you want to use R. Personally, I've used Python more, so that's what I'm familiar with. And just an aside, if you want a lot more information on the kind of technical details of those, we have a whole documentation page which tells you a lot more detailed reference information. It has a few guides as well on similar flows to what I've talked here, so exploring data, managing data, and using it, and a lot more information on how to use the SDK. But just coming back to where we were before, sorry for hopping back and forth. This is then a code snippet that you can take into a Python environment. And we do have a workspace that we also host. And if you don't have access to that already, then you feel free to contact us and we'll make sure that you get access to that. But what that looks like is a very typical data science environment that a lot of people have. And so if you started a Python notebook, a Jupyter notebook, and then put your code into it, what this code snippet has done is it's identified which data set we were looking at. It's pre-configured the filter that we've done in the website, and then we can start accessing data through a different environment. And then of course, in a coding environment, it's up to you what you do next. There's a huge range of things if you're doing analysis. Endless libraries and potential for doing computations and analyses and all sorts of things. So I won't go deeply into those opportunities there, but to just say, of course, there's a huge amount, and of course, with the assistance of some help from large language models and things like this, you can also learn quite quickly or experiment quite quickly with different code snippets. Asking for particular concepts and helping get them developed. As I say, this is our internal workspace, but there's tons of other external options like Google Colab, which is completely free to start using, and again, works in a very similar way. The only main difference is that you'd have to add your own authentication using an API key rather than it being done for you in our own internal workspaces. So that's those are two kind of code-based connection methods. And again, I won't. Sorry if I'm throwing a lot of things at you, but I won't talk deeply through this other example. But other than to say that there are many different ways, or local running of Python or R code. A lot of people like RStudio locally, I think, in a lot of these domains. Again, all of these things are open, and the documentation should cover how you can access and other things. Finally, I would mention that there's two other kind of connectivity options that we have. One, essentially, that powers the Map Explorer, which is these things called vector tiles. And these are great for essentially like web applications and mapping. This link can be used in GS tools and things like this. And that's a great way of visualizing data. The other connection option is an OGC Features API, which is very similar to WFS. It's kind of the later generation, essentially the next generation of WFS, if you're familiar with it, the Web Feature Service. And this allows you to connect to things like a GS application. Again, for those of you who haven't come across it before, QGIS is essentially a completely open source, free version of a GIS application. ArcGIS, for example, you have to pay quite a lot for, but this is you can just go online and download it, and it's quite easy actually to get going with our feature service here. So there's a link here essentially. There's documentation that tells you how to connect there as well. There's a link, and if you have that link, you can basically put it into QGIS, create a new connection, paste it in, and off you go with a lot of great data, essentially. Did I do something silly? New ODP Public was the one I did. I do have to admit I already have it from before, but this is the new one. And again, then a lot of data sets that you can access, like, well, let's stick with the ones that we've talked a little about already, so we don't get too confusing. But this is again that the whale ship collision, and again, pulling it into something like QGIS then gives you a whole other range of tools and opportunities for analysis and on top of it. So you sort of see it loading. In some ways, we have a little bit less control over the performance when it's going through something like the OGC Features API. But still similar things. You could do a filter on all risk being greater than, I don't know, 0.6, and highlight just those areas, and end up with essentially a subset of the data as well. So there's many different ways depending on what you're used to. If you're a JS user, maybe this makes a lot more sense to you. If you're more into programmatic and coding access, then there are other ways. And yeah, I'll do a silly example here. It's not meant to be particularly meaningful, but if these were hotspot areas based on the risk, then you could add a buffer around them if you thought that that was something interesting to do, and create a kind of region around the highest risk areas, um, and end up with a kind of new something interesting that would look a bit strange, but we could then also dissolve that so that they merge together, and maybe then you have something interesting. Who knows? I'll do one more if I have it, multi-part to single part. I have to remember where it is, this one. All right, and then we might end up with something that we've created. Again, a very trivial example, but showing you that starting with something on that's hosted and has the backend of the Ocean Data Platform, flowing into an application or coding, doing some kind of filtering, creating something slightly different. And then again, maybe you want to export that as a new thing for some purpose. Let's see. So those are let me just do that. Those are essentially the main ways that we offer connectivity to the data. And then finally, I'm just going to round this off with essentially the last arm of this, which is about essentially publishing and sharing data. So this is then the case where you say, well, we have certain data on the platform, but of course we don't have everything, and although we hope to grow the catalog a lot over time, we also really want users to come and bring their own data and use it for their own purposes too. So if you want to do that, then essentially you can go to this thing called My Data. You can see a lot of little tests that I've done recently because for demos I often do tests. But for example, the data set that we just created, which is the buffer region around high risk whale areas. We don't have to give it a formal title, but just for the sake of remembering what it is. I exported that from QGIS right now as a GeoJSON. What I can do is just upload it. It's actually a very small file, so it's a very small and trivial example. And what I've done here is I've put the file onto the Ocean Data Platform. This is currently private to me. No one else in the world sees this but me. And that's there for me. If we want to use the table functionality, then we need to turn this file into a table. You can see there's no table here currently. And there's a button here that says for certain data types, and that's GeoJSON, CSV, and Parquet at the moment, you can ingest this file to the table, and that will essentially create what we've seen before from in the examples that I've shown you before. That there's a table associated with the data set. We can then preview what's happening in the data, and again, this explore table option. You can then see these areas that we've created where there's this slightly odd looking buffer zone around these high risk areas from the data set. That yes, looks like that essentially. And again, essentially everything that comes through my data ends up with very similar functionality as everything else. Sorry, 1 second. Something. 1 second. Okay. I can give one last example, which I think would be interesting before I kind of wrap it up. And so, da, 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 da. Just to show that sometimes takes a second to run, but once the uh, backend runs it, we can then also get the functionality of putting it onto the Map Explorer as well. So this is the same view that you had before as well. Yes, so that's kind of that flow. And then again, this may be again trivial, but adding maybe if we go back to our ship kind of collision mapping thing, maybe we wanted to add something slightly different, or we could add maybe we wanted to know something about ports, and the Natural Earth dataset has a catalog of interesting things here, a bunch of interesting kind of more social layers. This, for example, would be a ports dataset that we could download. And again, I'll just follow that same flow again, just to kind of clarify it. And here, ports v2, because I probably did it before. And again, ingesting, and it didn't like that name. So I'm going to have to do that. There we go. And ingest that to a table again. So again, when we have these things that have then the table being ingested, we have the same functionality. We can then kind of square this loop where we say, I'll get rid of some of these because I think it's getting a little bit messy. But say that if we have one data set that we're interested in, and this is publicly in the catalog, and we've got other data sets that we're interested in that are private, and we can take, for example, the ports data set that we just added and add that to the map as well. And so that's how you can combine, for example, a variety of both public and private data in these things. And that's true whether it's this Map Explorer functionality on the platform or it's the code environments. It's different. All those things can piece together in a hopefully pleasant way. Yes, I think the only thing that I forgot to mention, two last things. There's always things. As I say, this dataset as of right now is private to only me, but you may want to share that with some collaborators. The person that creates it is the admin of the dataset, and they can choose how to administer it and what to do with it. But you can add other admins and who have the access to give rights to other people as well. Or you can add other editors who have the rights to change the data and the metadata. Or you can give viewers who just can see it. Even if it's still private to other people, then the viewers will have named access to it. And again, the typical kind of ways you're probably used to in other cloud tools of just sharing a link is also possible. So having a link that is public and yet not registered anywhere. So it's kind of as if you have the link that you have access, but if not, then it's at least hidden. So it's less secure than giving named access, but it's can be very functional. When it comes to publishing, then and putting public data on the platform in the catalog, we really welcome submissions for anyone who have data and as long as it has a credible license and legal status that it's okay to publish, then we're very happy to add more data to the platform and very happy for people to add it themselves. We do ask people to ensure that data has the correct licensing. There's a bunch of pre-formed licenses that you can hear, or sometimes you need to write one that's because sometimes people have very specific licenses. The attribution of who owns the data, citation is usually required, and even if it's not required, it's nice to make sure that the people who created the data get the recognition for it. So if you want to publish data to the platform, we do ask you to kind of ensure it's well described, have a good go at the metadata, and then you can click request to publish. We'll have a quick look at it and just to make sure that it makes sense, and that it's reasonable. And if we have some questions, we'll come back to you. But that's the kind of process for sharing, either with named people or requesting to make it public to everyone via the Ocean Data Platform catalog. A few other details here that I won't go terribly into, but there's a lot more description of the specifics of how the different metadata fields in the documentation, and I think that's yeah, probably enough for now. Okay, finally, I will say a few quick words on where we're heading next. I think one thing is we are working hard on a kind of improvement to our back end, which really changes and improves the amount of capabilities we have for data and the quantity and size of data that we have on the platform. Right now, I think we're capable of having, there are some data sets that are millions, or even in some cases I think billions of points that do they do work, but we're going to make them work even better and make sure that the visualizations is in line with that. Another big thing is our sister organization RevOcean, which is a research vessel being built currently and will launch next year. So in the course of 23 and 7, there'll be a huge amount of new data coming onto the platform from RevOcean, which will be very exciting. In terms of features, we'll continue to develop the Map Explorer and give more functionality there. And you know, importantly, I think things like the My Data section of ingesting your own data, we really want to improve the experience of that and make it easier to use, because it still can be tricky. Add a whole more functionality around collaboration and collaborating on data, and add a strong kind of link of lineage within the platform itself. So you'll notice in the demonstration I gave now, essentially the pathway to kind of creating new data kind of went a little bit externally. So we took a subset of data and we took it externally to do something, and then we could put it back on the platform. We're going to try and start offering more functionality that allows you to do more without the data ever leaving the platform, in a sense. Not that we're trying to lock you in, but that we give you the functionality that it doesn't have to be downloaded locally or in another environment before you can do certain steps in it. And that also raises some very interesting options for lineage and creating kind of chains of data that are dependent on each other, which I think will be great fun. But I've talked a lot, and we've got a small group here, and I'm sure you know, everyone's very happy to hear some questions if people have questions. You know, it can be absolutely anything, but you know, for example, specific data sets or data types you'd be really interested or excited to understand if they would work. Any questions on the features or the direction, you know, please feel free to shout out if you have any questions. You don't have to, no standing on ceremony. So please just unmute or and say if you have a question. I'll give you a minute to think, and if not, then that's absolutely fine too.
Hi, thank you for a nice presentation.
Okay.
Håkon Vatne. I just wonder, can I upload data programmatically?
Yes, absolutely. And really, that's what we do, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's so again, I think the UI upload that we show, I think everything. I think see everything on the web interface as embodying what you can do with code, and it's obviously a subset of it. So if you are able to go into the world of the SDK and the coding, you will find a lot more actual functionality that I wouldn't try to explain in a webinar like this really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and that really gives you the options for, pipelines and updating data on a regular basis and all this other stuff that becomes a really important thing as well. So yeah, it's I recommend it. Again, there's some nuances with getting schemas right with the tables. That becomes the files kind of hide you from a lot of that stuff. So it comes with a bit of a. Honestly, there are some cases where I still think it's easy just to create a file and ingest it that way. But yeah, for other stuff where you want to automate or scale or whatever, then the code way is great.
Okay.
Did you have any specific thoughts on what you might want to try that with, Håkon?
Yes. So I'm working with the Echo Sounder data.
Yeah.
From Sonic, the Kaio KSE 310. So it generates 100 megabyte file every 1 hour ish. So, and I need some place to store it. So this is on a fishing vessel. So it just keeps on recording. So
interesting.
Yeah.
You'll probably have stumbled across the Aker BioMarine data that we have there. That's on a similar track. I'm not sure if you've seen that on the platform, but you should have it. It's also
once again, what was that?
So on the Ocean Days platform, the Aker Krill Company have shared a lot of.
Yeah. I've seen that. Yeah. I just I downloaded a few of those files just to see if my program could read them. So yeah. So this is a different format, but sort of the same. Yeah.
So, no, that sounds really interesting. Do feel free to reach out and if you get stuck on the programmatic side, we'd love to help.
Awesome.
I've seen you on the Slack community, so I know you know that.
Yeah, I've been there for some time. Yeah. Is there a cap on how much data I can put up?
Honestly, right now, no. We really want people to use it, so we don't put restrictions. I mean, I think we're obviously monitoring to make sure that there's no kind of suspicious activity and kind of bots and malicious things. But please use and try and have a
because this is a lot of data. These files are huge.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean,
they're not huge, but there are so many. So you fill up like 32 gigabytes a month if you are careful.
Well, if it makes you feel better, the Aker BioMarine is 500,000 of those files.
Okay, nice. Thank you.
No worries. Great to see you.
Thank you.
There was someone else that was, I think, popped a hand up, but I didn't quite catch it. I think someone else maybe had a question.
Yeah,
Hi.
I have a question. Hi, I have a questions that we see the potential of using this Ocean Hub for early environmental impact assessment, and we are wondering whether you may have some reference cases that others also use it for early environmental impact assessment.
Yes, and I mean, yeah, I think so. Certainly, the domain of we've done a lot of work on kind of habitats and ecosystem data. I think which at least plays one of the roles in that. I don't think we have an entire case around it, but there's two related things. I think these ecosystem and habitat mapping exercises. We have someone who's been both a collaborator and a colleague, Gustav, who works on habitat mapping, especially in the Western Indian Ocean region, for example. He's done some webinars on kind of specific species habitats seagrasses and corals in the past. But yeah, I mean, essentially the platform is meant to support kind of standardized working with a range of data. It's meant to support people who have maybe there's some data on the platform that you need or is nice to have there already, whether it's EEZ data or marine regions and this other stuff, but also to add your own data. So I think if you have a need where it's using a bunch of, if you need to consolidate a bunch of different data sources, then yeah, please try to use our platform, and please reach out to us if you need any help and assistance in how you use it. I think it would be great. So yeah. Just to mention on that, I think for anyone else listening as well, I think the we have a couple of avenues. I mean, you can email me if you want, or you can. There's a Slack community that you can access. There's issues on UTracker, kind of issue tracking if you have any specific problems, but reach out any which way that suits you best, and we'll do our best to support you in getting on the platform.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Matthew, before we close, we have one super quick question in the chat about link-based sharing in our My Data space. So Elise is wondering if the link ever expires.
No, not by default. No, I guess that's up to you. You can turn it on and off, but it doesn't have an expiration. It's a good question. I hadn't thought about it, but we will. Yeah. I guess maybe you want both. Both might be good. Giving the option for a user to have an expiration could be interesting. Anyway, good question. If anyone else wants to shout, please do. And if not, hopefully you know where we are. And thanks for joining us, I think is the last thing to say. And thanks for supporting that.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
And yeah, go and have a look at the platform. Would be my final comment. Please use it for which purpose you think you have for it, and tell us how you get on. That's the most important thing for us. We're really trying to develop this, and that happens best with people that find things that they can't do, as well as things that they can do. So please find the limits, and we'll be very happy to. Thank you, everyone. We'll end the event now, I think so. Thanks a lot.
Bye.